Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. The Oscars are tomorrow. I thought I'd put this out today so the episode would have a day and a half to live before it got incredibly dated. Jimmy Kimmel is your host. He said what sets the Oscar apart from other live events? Well, it's not as sweaty as the Super Bowl. It's classier than any other award shows. You know, the Oscars are the original. This is the big one. It's the granddaddy of them all, and everyone's aware of that. His wife, Molly, is an executive producer on the show. She says the goal is to keep it a happy, joyful celebration for the people in the room. Keep it moving. Jimmy's also really good on his feet. He thrives in spontaneous moments, so live TV is perfect for him. Jimmy said, to be honest, sometimes I hope things go wrong because it mixes things up a bit. You don't want everything to be too neatly wrapped up in a bow. You want a little bit of a mess. Maybe somebody could slap someone. You want a little bit of risk, and it's a live show, and you want to remind people that if something happens, which things seem to be happening a lot lately, I feel like I'll be ready for it. Kimmel's asked about Jo Koy. You may recall Jo said this horrible, mean, no, just terrible joke about Taylor Swift, who reacted by basically murdering Jo Koy's career. I hate to do this to you, but let's share the just vicious joke that Jo Koy told about Taylor Swift.
As you know, we came on after a football doubleheader. The big difference between the Golden Globes and the NFL, on the Golden Globes, we have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift. I swear.
Oh, that is just, it's so mean. Jo, what are you doing? That's vicious. Kimmel said part of the struggle there for Jo was that he's not part of Hollywood in the way that Kimmel is. Kimmel said, it's a lot easier for me than it is for Jo Koy. It's like if a stranger walks up to you and goes, nice shirt, Tom Selleck. If it's one of your friends, you don't take offense to it. But if it's somebody you don't know, you might smack him one. He thinks Jo Koy should get another chance. Not that I have any business programming the Golden Globes, but I think they should let Jo Koy host the show next year and give him a shot at doing it over. It would be very smart. I think he learned all the lessons and he's a funny guy. I think it would be nice for everyone. Koy has said he'd love to return as host of the Golden Globes, but with 5 months to prepare, not 9 days. Jimmy Kimmel will now have hosted the fourth most Oscars behind Bob Hope, Johnny Carson, and Billy Crystal. That's some serious company there. He says, it just shows you how far we've fallen as a culture. Deadline asked, do you actually enjoy hosting the show? It seems like a lot of pressure. Jimmy said, I don't love the lead up to it, but I do actually enjoy hosting the show. When I'm on stage and everything's ready to go, it's fun to show everyone what you've been working on. I think it's like secretly fixing up a car in a garage and then you bring the family to see it. How much time does he prepare? He says, we really start in earnest when it gets announced because we can't tell anyone we're doing it until then. So I started thinking about things. I make little notes about award shows all the time. You know, if I think of something, I put it in a little folder in my computer and I refer back to that stuff when I need it. But as far as writing specific jokes and coming up with ideas for the show, I think we started like the day we announced it to the press in mid-November. Does he see the movies? Yes. I think I see more movies than almost anyone. Not even when I'm hosting the Oscars, but I figured out I think I see about 100 movies a year. I make a point to see all of the features, even the short films, the short animated, everything. Does he test his monologue? I don't trust a group of strangers, and also I'm not sure that it really helps because if you go to a comedy club and try the jokes out in front of a comedy audience, I don't think you're necessarily going to get the same response as you will get for the people who the jokes are about, right? Imagine you made a vicious, horrible joke about Taylor Swift and she basically murdered your career by making an icy face. That would be terrible.
The big difference between the Golden Globes and the NFL, on the Golden Globes, we have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift.
So what I try to do is test the jokes on the people I know who get it, who've been to the Oscars, who understand the dynamic there, and who've also been honest with me and will say like, yeah, I like that one more than this one. Will there be political jokes? I mean, I don't rule it out completely, but it's not necessarily what the show's about. And it's not like I don't have an outlet to do that 5 nights a week. So it definitely has to be a joke that I can't resist for me to use it at the Oscars. Deadline. If a joke doesn't go well, do you plan on blaming your writers? Kimmel said, absolutely. I'll do it privately when I go to their homes and fire them in front of their families. They too asked about Jo Koy. You may recall Jo Koy told this just horrible joke about Taylor Swift. Here, let's listen to it again.
We have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift.
Oh, that's so mean. I can't believe Jo did that, Kimmel said. I felt bad for him. I don't think he was put in a great position. I think he'd be the first person to tell you that publicly blaming his writers was not the right move, but it's overwhelming. I think he's a funny guy, and I think it's a shame that for a lot of people who saw him for the first time, that was the impression they got, and I hope they look at his other work. The guy riffed a joke in the moment. What are you going to do? Toughen up, writers. Kimmel says, this is the crown jewel of award shows. It's an analogy people use. It's like when people say, this guy's the Michael Jordan of this. These are the Oscars of the chemical engineering world. They don't say, this is the Golden Globes of the chemical engineering world. Do you want to do more Oscars? Jimmy said, I think I've retired from ruling things out, so I'd never be so presumptuous as to assume they'd want me back year after year after year. But this year they wanted me and they asked me, and so I'm definitely going to do this one. Funny anecdote here, they brought up that Jimmy Kimmel is the longest running late night host now, and the ratings seem good. Jimmy said, I know, it's crazy to think about it. I mean, it's funny because even like my offices in our building, ABC didn't want to pay $50,000 to remodel a room that had windows in it because they weren't so sure that we were going to be on and it'd be worth it. So the first 2 years I was in a windowless basement and really had to beg them to move me upstairs so I could get some sunshine on my body. People asked Jimmy Kimmel about a post-show tradition. Jimmy says the award show tradition is in and out after the show. And I think part of why is because when people are in LA, one of the things on their list is to go to In-N-Out Burger. And there are a lot of people in LA just for the Oscars. And they wind up going like, all right, also you get very hungry. So In-N-Out is definitely the award show tradition. Nothing against McDonald's, but on award show night, it's In-N-Out. Jason Zinneman writes for the New York Times, headline, Wanted, writers for award show jokes must be skilled at diplomacy, hosts who have to entertain insiders at the ceremony and outsiders watching at home, presenters who change their minds, no wonder the bits are awkward. Jason brings up Jo Koy throwing the writers under the bus. Jason says 2 of the 3 veterans who wrote jokes for the Golden Globes monologue declined to comment for this article, and a third didn't respond to the request. Megan Maron wrote for the 2011 Oscars and said, you want it to be a little edgy, but not so much that it turns off the grandparents. Bruce Valance expressed sympathy for that meanie Jo Koy, pointing to the shots of the stars not laughing at his vicious, mean joke about Taylor Swift. Bruce said, did he really need the reaction of Taylor Swift to swiftly bring condemnation upon his soul? At South by Southwest today, 4 p.m. local time, Samantha Bee presents Wits End, a live game show. Doug Benson and James Adomian face off in a game of custom-made trivia. Created and hosted by Adam Kessner. Whether it's a grab bag from the bag of misery when you lose or an inflatable trophy when you win, this isn't your ordinary trivia game. So Adam's hosting it, but Sam B is presenting it. Okay, guess she is the bigger name. 7 p.m., the stand-up spotlight, parentheses, stand-up comedy. Some of our favorite stand-ups take the stage for an unmissable lineup. The unmissable lineup includes Rick Glassman, Louisa O'Mealan, and Jabuki Young White. That is the unmissable lineup at the stand-up spotlight, 7 o'clock. At 7:30, Yamanika Saunders presents Maestra, live comedy, solo show there. 8 o'clock, the Upright Citizens Brigade's Ass Cats, 4 S's and Ass Cat, parentheses, live comedy. Matt Besser, John Gabris, and Vic Michaelis on the lineup. Programming descriptions are generated by participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of South by Southwest. Okay, lawyers, appreciate that one. 9 o'clock, The Creek in the Cave presents stand-up comedy. James Adomian, Tone Bell, Napoleon Emile, Dulce Sloan, Rich Voss. My son played golf with Rich last summer, and apparently Rich was a little full of himself. So when you hear me eye roll Rich every time his name comes up, that's why. 10 o'clock, The Origins of Whatever You Call We Did with Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel, live comedy event. Conan and Robert talk about meeting up at SNL in the late 80s and reminisce about the idiocy they created together that led to the birth of a talk show, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, that would change the way people call Late Night with David Letterman. We'll see rare clips, including the Adam West pilot Look Well. That's a fun thing if you can find that. And some highlights from the beginning of Late Night. Again, programming descriptions are generated by participants that do not necessarily reflect the opinions of South by Southwest. Credits. Conan O'Brien is credited to Warner Brothers Discovery. Robert Smigel, not available. And at 11 p.m., Stamptown live comedy. A raunchy, chaotic, full-on fever dream, Stamptown is 90 minutes of pure spectacle featuring the most anarchic and wildly entertaining performances from around the world. Again, I'll remind you that program descriptions are generated by participants that do not necessarily reflect the opinions of South by Southwest. Some of the opinions, Dick Bath of the Scottish Field publication says, 1 star, as funny as Anthrax. Natalie Palamides, who's fantastic, is on this one. Also, Courtney Peruso, Ikechukwu Ufumoto, I'm sure I got that wrong, and I am sorry. Christina Catherine Martinez, and Zachary Zucker. Good pedigree on Stamptown. Past acts include David Cross, Reggie Watts, Hannah Einbender, Natalie Palamides, Kat Cohen, Sarah Squirm, you now know her as Sarah Sherman on SNL, Daniel Sloss, and others. Oh, Randy Feltface, Neil Hamburger. Yeah, that's a good show. All right, so if we were at South by tonight, let's do stand-up spotlight. Then we'll do the Creek and the Cave Presents stand-up. Let's make the Conan thing. And let's do Stamptown. We're going to have to leave each one of these shows early to make the next show. The schedule does not allow you to double up there. But that is your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. You can buy me at coffee.com/dailycomedynews. You know what I mean? I didn't phrase that well. See you tomorrow